And we're live. Welcome here, everyone.
Well, good morning.
Morning.
So let's leave our cameras on to do our introductions here.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, why don't you kick it off, since you should be on here because you're a key piece of the team, but why don't you start us off by introducing yourself?
Thanks, Dale. My name is Elizabeth, and I am the webinar specialist here at SAFE. And very happy to be joined today by our three lovely presenters. I'll hand it over to Stuart. Stuart, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Stuart Harper. I'm the Technical Director of Cloud Services, which means I kind of oversee FME Hub, FME Flow Hosted, and various other apps as well.
Good morning, everyone, or good day. I'm Rylan Maschak. I'm a product manager here at Safe Software for the FME Flow product.
And Gio Hoyt, everybody. My name is Dale Lutz. I'm one of the two co-founders of SAFE. I'm missing my compatriot Don, who's not able to join us today, but he sends his good wishes, and he'll be here for the next time we do a release webinar, I'm certain. So I think with that, Elizabeth, is this the point in here where we look at the agenda and turn off our cameras?
Yeah, we'll turn off our cameras just to save on some bandwidth for the rest of the webinar here.
In terms of what we're up to today, we're going to be looking a lot at kind of the universe that we operate in, and in particular, the things we've added to the .1 release of FME 2023 that we think make it even more applicable to your work lives, the challenges you face, and basically trying to give you more productivity that you can get your jobs done ever quicker than ever before. So Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about how we use this platform.
Yeah, so I'll skip right ahead to the help button there on the bottom left. I see there's a couple folks in the chat that might have some audio or visual issues. So just click that button, the bottom left, for 3 or 4 simple troubleshooting steps. The first one is usually just refreshing your browser. Share your reactions with us throughout the webinar with that react button. We love to see those. Polls. So we will have a poll coming up later, so keep an eye on that poll tab. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, we encourage you to leave those in the questions tab on the bottom right. We will have live Q&A at the end, and then the chat. So keep tuning into the chat there, letting us know where you're joining us from.
All right. Thanks, Elizabeth. All right. Well, to get us going here, let's look a little bit at the environment that we're all operating in. And our argument is that cross-departmental success is crucial in the environment, the data environment of today, where within your enterprise, data is living and being gathered in many different areas, and getting that all flowing and cooperating and moving smoothly is so crucial to an overall organization's efficiency. And that's really what we're striving for here at SAFE with FME. So a few words about us. We were named Customer's Choice. Thanks all of you for giving such a high regard to the work we do. That means an awful lot. We try very hard, and we always know we can do better, and we look for your input in that journey, but we do not take it for granted. So thanks so much. There's a few numbers about us. We're closing in on our 30th birthday here. Boy, that means we're almost middle-aged. Maybe we'll have to buy ourselves a sports car or something to celebrate once we hit 30 in December. But yeah, there's a lot of people using FME worldwide. We just had our largest gathering of users ever in Germany. There was about 640 people at that thing, which was way bigger than ever before. And the caliber of the talks and the conversation was unparalleled. It was really, really a true treat. And so anyway, we're going to be actually gathering in Seattle in 2025. If anybody wants to sort of plan for that, in probably the spring of 2025, we'll be looking for that. So yeah, FME, sun never sets, 128 different countries with FME, which is pretty humbling, actually. So we really say that there are two technologies in one platform. That is the FME integration platform, FME Form on the desktop, where you build and run things, and FME Flow, where you automate those things. And they can be run self-serve through the FME Flow apps, which certainly coming out of the FME UC in Germany, I really had a deeper appreciation for just how crucial those Flow apps are for many of you, and what a great benefit they can be to your organization. We like to say we have unrivaled data support, and we think that's pretty true because it's honestly pretty hard to support all these different types of data. Of course, tabular being very important to a big chunk of our audience, and we do support that very, very well. But in addition, all these different flavors of spatial data. And in the modern time, looking how we can add generative AI as a data source into FME along with cloud native data storage. There's some news on that we'll be talking about today as well. And as well on the AR, VR front, we continue to push on that and track developments, because that's a great destination for a lot of your data to not just be inspected, but experienced in an immersive way. Again, just thinking about the ways that we operate, we want to be wherever the data is. We want to give you tools for cleaning. A lot of you use FME for QA of bad data. In fact, I was doing some work late last night on some actually safe software sales data actually, and trying to understand it together with our CFO, and found that it wasn't quite as clean as I'd liked. And sometimes company names are spelt differently and so on. So that whole business of data integrity is an enormous one. On the usability side of things, taking dark data that isn't actually being used at all and shining a light on it, getting it into a form that can be used. And of course, delivering data to wherever it needs to be. We like to think about our differentiators, and that kind of guides a little bit of our effort, where we really look at these different aspects and see how can we push to be even better in these. So you can kind of see them yourself, and we'll look at these as we flow through. But I want to just point out that the first one about the largest ecosystem, really we have an unfair advantage in geospatial, and most of you on this call would be using us in some way or another to do with geospatial data. And that's in the data integration world, a little bit of a unique thing. And so that's what FME is really all about, is moving data around, particularly spatial data, but data of any kind. And now we'll start looking at what 23.1 brings to the table. We really think there's a lot of ways it can help all of you. And on the productivity side, I suspect none of you have less to do this year than you did last year. So you probably could use some help. Well, you certainly don't want your tools to be doing anything but giving you better productivity. And that's what we're trying to do. So to that end, we added some AI assistance into FME in the 2023.1 release. And very, very excited to show that off this morning. And in fact, we can take a look here at how it kind of works. One of the places, there's a few places where this manifests itself, and you can ask for some help, and then off it goes and gives you an answer. And so I'm going to be so bold as to try to do a live demo of this. So I'm going live here, folks. So there we are. Here I am inside of Workbench. I've fired it up already. And I want to read some address data that I got from actually a person on Twitter that was very kind, gave me some address data for Australia. And so let me just grab that address data, which is I think this one here, addresses.parquet. There we go. I'll grab that. So this is a GeoParquet file. It's one of the new formats in FME, a very good one. I can just run this. I got caching on, and just like that, I think I should have read 1 million features. And so there they are. There's 1 million point features from across Australia. And you can see here a few things. We got the all new feature information window on the right-hand side, showing me the attributes that are known on the canvas. So that's these ones. As well, there's some other stuff that if I want to dig in, I could get at, and then I can see details about the geometry over here, and I can look around at different of these. And so what I wanted to do today, because I think Australia has lots of interesting street names, I thought to myself, it would be interesting to, let's just fish out all the street names that have a Q in them and are at least 2 words. So to do that, I'm popping down a tester. I'm looking for the street names here. I'm just going to type that street name. And I'm going to say my operator is that we contain a regular expression, because that's how I'm going to match Qs and spaces. But it's a little tricky. So I'm going to pop this up. And here's where I put the regular expression in. And I'm going to hit this button to get my AI assistant out, because I can kind of do some regular expressions. But if you can do them automatically, it's even better. And so there we go, contains a Q or at least 1 space. That's my carefully chosen prompt. I'm going to hit the generate button to see what it does. Yes, I'm okay with sending it to a third party. And it's thinking, so it must be working. And there it is. Now that's kind of a bit interesting. So I don't really know how to read this, but down here it gives me an explanation. If I was really concerned, I can read that, but I'm going to trust it. It seems like it's matching all the test data that we had here. So let's give that a go. Yes. And we'll apply that. We'll say okay here. And we'll say okay here. And then I'm going to go ahead and run it. And I'm looking for the ones, yeah, that looks probably, we just filtered 1 million rows there. And all the ones that, let me get this right, all the ones that passed, let's look at those street names a little bit more. Yeah, we can actually sort them, might be interesting. Alfred Quinn, that's where we start. And we end up with Wonga Square. Ooh, I won't even try to pronounce the winner here. Warak Ni Lorquan. Is anybody on the call from that place? That'd be a pretty cool place to be. But anyway, that's your quick tour of the new functionality in Workbench, and we've just demoed that for you. So that manifests itself in a few places. So with regular expressions, that's what I just showed. You can do it for SQL. And if you click the button here, we'll send the schema down to the AI. Now this is hosted in Azure, so it's not an OpenAI. It's in our own little universe there, but some of you might not want to do that. But if you aren't afraid, send it down and it will write you good SQL. And it even knows about spatial SQL. If you use the inline querier and you can say things like, show me where the roads intersect the parks. And if you sent the schema down, it'll give you the right kind of a query there. And in Python, there's quite a bit of help there, actually. It'll generate code. It'll add comments for you. It'll refine it. We're pretty excited about that one. So that's what we've done in this release. Try it out. Let us know what you think. And we're pretty happy to get that in your hands. Pretty pleased that the team could pull that off. Like a year ago, this wasn't even on anybody's imagination, and we're already delivering it out to you. Yes. Try it out, and there is a thumbs up or down when it gives you the answer. Let us know if it makes you happy. Let us know if it makes you sad, and we'll do that. I think with that, Stuart, I'm going to hand it off to you to take us through the next set of functionality.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Dale. Yeah, I love that AI assist. I think I would have been about half an hour writing that regex, fiddling around on websites. So it's pretty amazing. I'm going to talk firstly about the Compare Workspaces tool. So this was actually out in 2023.0, but we've done a lot of polish to the tool for .1. So for those that aren't aware what this tool is, what it enables you to do is open two workspaces next to each other and compare the differences. It not only allows you to compare, it also allows you to kind of resolve any conflicts and merge conflicts into the base workspace. So this is extremely useful when you're working as part of a larger team, because you can now work and collaborate on the same workspace. Whereas before, this was very, very difficult to do. You'd pass the workspace around, you'd open the workspace, you'd try to figure out what to copy and copy across. It was very, very hard. So for those that haven't seen the tool, this is what it looks like on the right. You've got the base workspace on the left and the workspace you're comparing to on the right. And what we've enhanced here in .1 is it's really about usability of the interface. So you'll notice that things are highlighted yellow and blue. This indicates if items have been updated, if there's a conflict, or if they're new, like additions. And what we've done here is we've added support for that yellow and blue into the navigator, as well as along the bottom and the canvas. And the navigator is now also synced as well. So if you expand the navigator on the left, it copies on the right and vice versa. So basically everything's completely in sync now, the canvas and the navigator. We've also enhanced kind of the dialogues and the modals to make it easier to layer and work with multiple modals. So the other thing we've done as well is we have Git integration now. So you can just literally go to the disk and choose two workspaces and they'll compare, which is fantastic. You can also integrate this tool into Git. And what that means for those familiar with Git is you can, let's say you have a branch, a staging branch, and you make changes to a workspace, and you also have a master branch, and someone's made changes on that branch as well. What you can do is you can configure this tool to look when you do a merge to see if there's a conflict between the branch you're merging into and the branch you're on. And if there is a conflict, this tool will open. You can resolve the conflicts in this graphical user interface, click OK, and once you've resolved the conflicts, the changes will be ready to commit on that master branch. So incredibly powerful tool for kind of if you're working as part of a team and using source control. Next up, we've got enhancement on the FME flow side. So automation link counts are now here. We're starting to align that interface of form and flow more and more. And so you can see here on the right, we've now got the flow counts throughout for all the events in the automation. So this is really, really useful. You obviously only see this when the automation's running, but it helps you understand, where events are coming in, which trigger the events are coming in on, and then you can really get a good idea of how the events are propagating throughout the automation while it's running. So really helpful for debugging this is. Okay, so next up is project delivery. So this is all about improving and enhancing your ability to migrate workflows between FME flow environments and even just migrate up from form to flow as well. So on FME flow, we have this construct called projects. And projects, what they allow you to do is migrate bits of FME flow between environments. So we have the backup and restore, which lets you migrate, obviously, the whole server, but this lets you just choose small pieces to migrate between different FME flow environments. So you can see here the UI's being completely overhauled. But what I want to talk about here is full dependency support. So previous to this release, if you added, say, an automation to a project, that automation, we would check one level down for dependencies. So we would say, okay, we've got 5 workspaces in this automation. We're going to add those as dependencies. But we didn't go down the dependency tree any further. So we didn't look to see if the workspaces had any dependencies. And workspaces always have dependencies, web connections, database connections, now deployment parameters, packages. So what that meant when you migrated that project, it wouldn't actually run on the target server. You'd have to manually add all those things. So now when you add a top level item, or any item in fact, we'll always look down the dependency tree under that item and add everything to the project. The other really powerful model for this as well is for the DevOps side of things. You can set your project up once to say, look at an automation. And then as that automation or stream or schedule, as it changes and everything changes underneath, the project automatically updates. Next, so that's kind of more on the export. On the import, we've completely overhauled the import. So you can now preview what you're going to say, what you're going to see before you import. So this one, I like to say before, you crossed your fingers and you hope for the best when you did the import prior to this. But now you can see, we have this preview content window where you can see everything you're going to import before you import it. And you can even choose to exclude certain key items like tokens, web connections, database connections before you do the import. So the best way to demo all this, to show you how it all comes together, is to do a demo. I'm not as brave as Dale here, so I've actually got a recording here. But what we're going to do is we're going to migrate a project from our development environment, and we're going to migrate it across to our staging environment. So this is the project here. You can see it's been completely redesigned. We're going to add a automation in here, so another automation. So I can come into here, this thing, we can filter and search in here now. I'm going to add the automation in, and I can see all the dependencies immediately in this interface as to what's actually been added under the automation. Next, I can actually now view the dependencies in here once I've added it to the project. And this is crucial because obviously the dependencies will change over time if things are updated, so you can come in here and check. Now I'm going to export the automation. within the project. So I'm going to export the project here so I can import it to the target server. So once I've decided on my security settings, I click export, and you can now go and view the history, and you can also see pending imports and exports as well in this UI. So that's really helpful for debugging. So now I'm actually on my staging server, not my production server, completely different FME flow here. And I'm going to drag and drop that project file that I just exported. But we want to have a look at this. We want to do a quick preview here. So I'm going to click preview. And now what we'll be able to see is we can now see exactly what's going to be imported and updated on this target server. We can see which items are new. We can see which items we're overwriting. Complete transparency. You can also choose to exclude deployment parameters, connections, users, tokens, because we had feedback that these often get included but don't want to be imported. And then when we're all done, we can import the project and those changes will be applied. So those changes are not applied until you go through that final step. You could cancel out at this point. Okay, so that's projects. And next up, we've got deployment parameters. So this is along the kind of the same lines. It can be used for DevOps, but it has other uses as well, which I'll explore. But deployment parameters, they're really 2023.1. They were in FME Flow in 0.0, but there was no form integration. In 1, we now have the full FME form integration as well. So what are deployment parameters? Well, what this enables you to do is define configuration in each environment. So often in staging, production, and even in form locally, you'll be using different databases, different web connections, different passwords. And previously what you had to do is you had to manually update these values or use scripts or something when you moved the workspaces and workflows between environments. So now what you can do is you can define your deployment parameters in each environment, so in staging, in production, in development. And then as you can reference those deployment parameters throughout your form workspace and within automations on Flow. And then when you migrate the workflows between the different environments, the new values in each environment are just picked up automatically. So you don't have to go and edit things and change things on publish. So the other thing you can do is you can locally override. So you can sync to the staging server, pull your deployment parameters down locally. But then in form, if you do want to just locally override, you can do that as well. Okay, so again, I think to tell the full story here, the best thing I can do here is just give a quick demo because it is a little bit hard to just explain. So I'm on my staging server here and I've got my deployment parameters. I've got two values, one for environment pointing to staging, which is a text value, and one pointing to web connection. I've got different credentials to S3 to AWS for staging and production. I'm now in FME form and I'm going to sync. So this is new. I can sync to my development FME Flow server. And you can see these two deployment parameters that I set up on Flow are now accessible in form. Within any transformer now, you can choose to reference those deployment parameters. So here I'm going to choose the web connection. And in this bucket here, via a macro, I'm referencing the environment parameter. So when I run this workspace now, it's going to use those deployment parameter values. But the key thing is here now, I'm going to switch over to my production server and I have the same parameters set up with the same names, but they have different values. So I'm now called prod and I've got Skytrain production, completely different AWS account, new set of credentials. So I'm going to switch to the production server within form and you can see that the values of those parameters have changed. So if I was using these deployment parameters hundreds of times throughout that form workflow, they'd just be automatically picked up there. But really the main use case there is I can then publish that workspace up to my production flow and the values on that flow deployment parameter store will be automatically picked up without having to change anything. So we're adding support for password to 2024. but we have web database connection and text support at the moment. The other thing I just want to mention quickly, even if you don't have multiple environments, this is a really useful functionality. Just if you basically you have many parameters across many different workspaces, and you want to basically centralize that. So if you have one FME flow and you have 50 workspaces and you have the same parameter in all of the workspaces, if you use deployment parameters, you can just reference one parameter, and then when you update it, it will update across all your workspaces and all your automations as well. So with that, yeah, I'm going to pass things over to Rylan to keep the story going.
Thanks, Stuart. That brings us to our differentiator of deploying anywhere. So we recognize that not all data is being moved to a single system. There needs to be a way to support our customers wherever that data resides. We've observed that new systems are introduced to organizations, but the idea to centralize everything is becoming untenable or not even being entertained. So what is our answer to that? Well, that is our remote engine service. That's a new product we have for the FME platform. The remote engine service will allow you to put your data processing close to the data. So let the FME platform help you with that problem of distributed data. The remote engine service will be able to sit next to your data regardless of what system it resides in. So it is efficient and scalable. Once you install, you can configure any number of engines on the remote engine service. Doesn't matter if they're standard or usage-based, both are supported. The data stays where that remote engine service is located, so you can reduce time and cost associated with network latency and data transfer. It's easy to deploy. After you install the main FME Flow instance, you install the remote engine service on another machine and you can connect to it, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. You can mix and match the operating system. So if you have your main deployment on Linux, you can install these remote engine services on Windows. You can have different supporting software on each machine, different Python libraries underneath. And the remote engine service is designed to be secure. Helps your organization support data compliancy, and it reduces the security risk as it only communicates over HTTPS and doesn't require you to open other ports for communication with the main installation. Some of our customers, many of you on this call, may have configured the distributed engine with your FME Flow deployment, and you might be familiar with all the hoops you've had to jump through with respect to the different ports and database connections that you have to open up. It's very simple with the remote engine service. It's just that one HTTPS connection. So let me talk through a few scenarios where you may find the remote engine service useful. First one here is the classic hybrid deployment where we have on-prem, but we also have data in the cloud. For example, this Azure cloud. I have my main FME Flow deployment, has its own engines running locally on-prem, but then I've installed the remote engine service in my virtual network. Those remote engines can talk to the data in the storage or the data warehouse of Azure. The data stays there, doesn't get transferred across, and everything stays secure. Another example here, you may have an organization with multiple offices across the world. I know some customers have installed individual FME Flow instances for each geographic location, but then you have to worry about syncing the users, the roles. Maybe you have automations or flow apps that run in one environment, but you want them in the other. So you have to figure out some synchronization. Maybe you've started to use projects and you've integrated that into your workflow for nightly synchronization. However, with remote engine service, you can just install those to the remote offices, have all your information controlled from the main FME Flow deployment, like user management, and like I said, automations, flow apps. And then for the data processing, it's just done locally for each of those remote offices. And those two previous examples, they both have on-prem deployments, but you can go full cloud. In this example, you can have your main FME Flow deployment in Amazon. It's working with data stored in AWS services. You can connect a remote engine service that is in your Azure cloud virtual network. For those of you who are early adopters of the remote engine service, it was actually released with 23.0. For 23.1, the licensing is fully automatic. So once you connect the remote engine service to your main deployment, the licensing is taken care of for you. And that's both standard and CPU usage engines, of course. I've also have a pre-recorded demo here to walk you through connection and the engine management for the remote engine service. So let's give it a go here. So I have two web interfaces that I'm looking at here. One is my main flow deployment, and I can create a new connection to the remote engine service. It's as simple as entering in the URL and the administrator password. All the job orchestration is going to be managed through queues. So I set my remote queue here, then that's how I know I can send all my jobs to these remote engine services. I can set my standard CPU usage engines. Don't have to worry about licensing, that's done automatic. After the connection's initialized, there you can see my engines come up in my remote engine service. This is actually a mixed environment, I believe. So I'm gonna log in on my main deployment. And if I run a workspace, I'm just gonna have a demo workspace run here. I don't set any parameters. That's just running locally on my main FME flow deployment. And like I mentioned, it's the queues. That's how we want to manage sending jobs to our remote engine service. So if I expand the advanced section, select my remote job queue. Now when I click run, the main deployment sends the FME workspace over to the remote engine service. It doesn't send any data. And if I view the log, I see that on my main deployment, it's just a confirmation of the job is sent. And then on my remote engine service, that's where I can see the log. That's where I can see that the job has processed. Once you have a connection established with remote engine service, all the engine management is still done from the main FME flow deployment. So if I go to the engine management remote engine service page, I can select that connection and tune up or down the standard engines. So maybe I want to take away all the engines and free them up in my licensing pool. I can do that from my main deployment, and I can observe here on the remote engine service, very shortly those engines will be removed from that pool. So the remote engine service is a great improvement to the distributed FME engine model. As I mentioned, it's a lot more secure. It is going to be more performant. And over time, things like automatic licensing, we're going to be taking as much of the administration and management off the machine that the remote engine service resides so that everything can be controlled from the main deployment. So the FME platform has unrivaled support for systems and services. And we have some exciting new support for cloud optimized formats. The big deal with many of these systems is that you can read data without downloading the entire data set. So the first one listed here, Cloud Optimized GeoTIFF, which actually began as a collaboration between Amazon, Planet Labs, Mapbox, Esri, and I believe the USGS to put Landsat archive onto AWS in a more accessible way. So it's ended up at this optimized way to store geospatial data as TIFF files. The cloud optimized point cloud reader, that's quite similar in concept and operates on point cloud data stored in the cloud. That one is new for the 23.1 release. We also have in this library of formats the flat GeoBuff. Now, think of this as an attempt to design a simple, modern shapefile successor that works seamlessly with GeoJSON. It excels at lossless compression without flattening geometries or stripping properties. GeoParquet, that's a new big data storage format optimized for geospatial data, and you might guess by the name, it works very well with Apache Parquet. And the last one listed here, ZAR, not just a cool name, it's a cool new format designed specifically for accessing what is called multi-dimensional array data stored in the cloud. So I found that's comparable to HDF5 and NetCDF. New frontiers with AI. Of course, we have that generative AI reader that came out with 23.0. We also have a variety of AI-based transforms available on FME Hub. It's a quote here from Andre Karpathy. The hottest new programming language is, well, we won't say English, but we'll say natural language, because you can feed in As you saw with Dale's example with regex, you can just feed in natural language. The AI does the code generation for you. I think it's a huge game changer in terms of efficiency. Another user on Twitter or X mentioned, is it fair to think of LLMs as a database with a natural language query interface? I think I agree with this quote here, and I think it is even more powerful when you consider that at some point organizations are going to be able to train AI systems on their own internal data. Everything will be kind of managed within your own organization. You're not going to want that to spill out into the big world there. But imagine the efficiency that we're going to get for our workers and just kind of some of our daily tasks there. HTTP caller. That's one of my favorite transformers. I'm an FME flow guy, but I work in FME form quite often, and more times than not, I'm using the HTTP caller. So we have a great improvement in 23.1. You can see there's a new import button there to import the Open API spec for a set of endpoints. It helps you with auto-populating parameters and exposing things. This makes it a lot easier to work with large APIs so that you don't have to go over to Postman and import the file there. You can do it right within FME. And some system updates. Dale, I'm wondering if you could speak to this slide for me.
Sure. Well, if there's one format we love, it's design files, and it seems like we've been working on it for 30 years, but at long last, we can read and write the coordinate system that might be in them. And I say might because there's no requirement. So that's a big deal. On the ArcGIS side, we're always working with our friends at Esri to make sure we give the best possible support to the whole Esri platform. And in this release, we did a bunch of refinement on feature data sets, just the way that all works. If you use those, you'll find that experience smoother and better. And the new date time fields and 64-bit integer field types, those got supported as well. And the sort of generic word there, snowflake, well, it got better. No, we continue to refine our support of snowflake, and actually, and for that matter, also Databricks in this release. On the transformers side, the only one in the .1 that's new is, it's not really even new, it's just a refinement, is on the Esri reprojector. We can do multi-step data transformations. And actually, I've seen, as an aside, we haven't worked it in there yet, but I think we could. On the proj reprojector, I know that the AI can be asked to give you a proj configuration string for doing these sorts of things as well. If you are someone that does hardcore multi-step transformations, yes, the AI understands proj, which means that it's not far from becoming self-aware.
Awesome, thanks, Dale. I'll continue on to mention that we have the Transformer Designer, a new tool that ships with the FME platform. So this is much more than creating custom transformers. This is bigger than that. So what you see here on the right-hand side is I'm going through, I'm actually creating the interface for a transformer or connector. That's the GUI that I'm going to put on top of some Python code that I'll write. So the Transformer Designer works in concert with our new Python package SDK. The Transformer Designer supports nearly all of the user parameters that you're familiar with. It supports the new conditional parameters, the conditional visibility that you see in both form and flow. And using this, you can create some production quality transformers and connectors to connect to new services, new APIs, maybe a more complex workflow. You can create these for internal consumption within your organization, or you can package it up and put it on FME Hub. And we have a new verified publisher tier on FME Hub. So if you are producing production quality, secure content, you're maintaining it across FME releases, it doesn't have to be the new Python package SDK based things. This could still be your regular custom transformers. If you find yourself as one of those people, you can apply to become a verified publisher. This will elevate your items in the FME Hub and will give you a little bit of credibility as you're going to be backed by safe software that you have met the requirements to become a verified publisher. That is open now, so you can follow that link to apply today. And it doesn't stop there with the publisher tiers. This is a set of screenshots from the quick add, in FME Workbench. You'll see the new badges here, official, community, and verified are listed right there in the canvas. So as an end user, you can have confidence that you're installing something that Safe Software is officially supporting, or it is produced by one of these verified publishers, or you're adding some community content to your workflow. And I believe with that, I'm going to be passing it over back to Dale to wrap us up.
Dale might just not be aware he might be muted.
Well, that's an old trick that I got wrong. Okay, just hang on. I'm just getting myself set up here. And where are we here? Other key. Okay, so I got to, are you seeing my screen? No, you're not. I think I have to share. Sorry, I'm not as smooth as my colleagues. Kaboom, 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 kaboom. Look at that. It's me. And I got to hide this thing and I'm live. All right, we'll wrap up by looking at a few of the other key features. I did show this a little bit in my flash demo, and that is the feature information window that's now part of FME 2023.1. Whenever you're inspecting data, you can look at this and understand more fully what in the world is going on. So on the exposed attributes, the ones that you're working with on your canvas, you can see their data types and the individual values on a particular row. And the unexposed ones tell you all the other things that FME knows about your data. And if you are using FME lists, that invention that we made, which is just a naming convention for attributes where there's a number in there that starts at 0 and goes up, those can be collapsed and expanded so that you can see them and in their full glory, but not be weighed down with them if you're not using them. We call this, there's one of our product managers from a while ago and longtime FME expert, Annabelle, came up with this concept she called FME brain, which is part of kind of understanding how FME works, getting that mental model right. And we think that this feature information window helps reflect FME brain better than we've ever done it before. I've already fallen in love with it. And we're looking to actually expand this concept more in future FMEs. So that's one we're proud of. Stuart kind of touched on this with the deployment parameters, but we now have a connection to FME flow in your toolbar that kind of sets which flow you're working with for those of you with multiple environments. And again, this sets the stage for us to do ever more better integration between flow and form as part of an initiative we call platformation at SAFE. And so that toolbar, a nice new thing. On the performance side, well, we're kind of to the end of our big, heavy lifting of our performance journey, but that doesn't mean we're done. There's different scenarios that we've been working on that, again, your mileage may vary. This doesn't affect everybody, but our algorithms team is looking at things more carefully. We're kind of finished our high data volume sweep that kind of got finished in the .0 release of 2023. So you saw me working with 1 million records there as if it was child's play. And that's kind of true now for most transformers. Will handle 1 million like nobody's business. And but in the meantime, we're also looking at other things we can improve. And you can see these, the area and area overlays, the aggregator, 1 hour to 6 minutes. That's like a Scotty kind of improvement. If we go by the book captain, hours could turn into days. That's the quote from Star Trek 2. So anyway, you can see, and the surface clipping 110 times faster. Scotty would approve, I'm sure. On the clipping side, your mileage will vary, but these are specific customer cases that were sort of pathological that we have looked at the algorithm and tuned up. So if you have nasty donut polygons, and I mean nasty, you're going to see a huge improvement in your clipping. And area to area clipping, I'm going to go with the infinity times faster. That was where you had multiple areas being clipped against multiple areas, mildly pathological case where it basically never finished, and now it's done in 2 minutes. So we're pretty pleased with all those results. You can see, your mileage will vary. These are specific data scenarios, but in general, much, much faster. All right, Elizabeth, I think I hand it off to you for this. I'm scared of the poll.
Yes, so we'll get folks to head to the polls tab there, and I'm going to publish a poll here. And we'll ask folks, which release feature do you feel will add the most value to your organization?
Can I vote more than one? Can I choose more than one, Elizabeth?
You can, Dale. So select up to your top 3. And yeah, we'll take a look at the poll there.
Are safe employees allowed to vote?
I suppose safe employees can vote.
Okay, the votes are pouring in. Well, look at that.
AI seems to be a leader.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll never consult the reference manual for regular expressions again. Actually, the SQL ones are very, very impressive as well. I didn't show that live, but it's you know, as someone like me that's not really I'm so old that when I went to university, SQL wasn't even a thing yet. So I'm never really, it's not a native language for me, and it's super helpful, especially if you let it see your schemas. It's amazing what it can do.
It looks like most people have voted now. So yeah, we can take a look. It looks like there's a few that are at the top.
I like Sam's line that I was on prequel, not sequel. Yes, people of my age. That is pretty funny. Okay. All right.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone.
So do we keep on going?
Yeah, I think we've got those results in now, so you can keep on going here.
Okay, so how do we get started? And I really appreciate one of the customers, Yusuf, asked, how does he find out more? Well, one thing you can do, of course, is to download FME 23.1, and you can get that off of the downloads page. I think you can get there from safe.com/downloads as well, if that's easier to type. Get that thing, install it, start playing with it. And you can contact us if you don't have a license, and we'll get you one. But ways that you can actually start to learn more. We have our ebook called Spatial Data for the Enterprise. That Dawn actually did a lot of work along with the marketing team on that. It's a great resource to kind of get you going. The FME Academy, which I think is maybe all new or will be very shortly. And you'll be able to get lots of tutorials and kind of walkthroughs, kind of self-learning at your own pace. The knowledge base is a great place to go for how-tos and talk to the community. Wonderful, as I say before, the sun never sets on the FME experts around the world that are so helpful. Our webinars, a wonderful archive. When I was answering some of the questions, I was pointing folks at that, safe.com/webinars. Click the on-demand tab, and you can look back at all of Elizabeth's life's work for the last several years. It's all sitting there. Great resources for you to look at. But the thing I really wanted to point, someone that wants to get started, if you're brand spanking new and you're not sure, the best thing to do is go to the accelerator, fme.safe.com, take the accelerator course. It's 90 minutes to FME happiness, and you get an overview and kind of an intro. You're on your way to forming that FME brain. That's the best way to get started if you are brand spanking new. fme.safe.com/accelerator. And of course, you can email us. We are friendly and happy to hear from you as well. Elizabeth, what's this about?
Yes, so we have the option to claim a community badge today as a thank you for joining us, for the folks that are part of our FME community. If you aren't part of our FME community, definitely check it out. It's home to a lot of amazing resources, and also a place where you can network with other users and experts alike there. So I just dropped the code in the chat as well.
Good. SWBAL. And I think that's probably about it. Yeah, you can download FME, contact us, check out the accelerator and other things. I think, is this the part where we get to talk about all the great questions that came in, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I'll get our presenters to turn back on their webcams here, and we can take a look through the questions panel. It looked like a lot of awesome questions came in and are still coming in. So thank you, everyone. I know we've gotten to already probably at least half of them, so that's great.
I appreciate what Jeff said in the chat about focus on security. And I know actually Ryland Stewart and I and Dawn and the other product managers at Safe, that's been a huge thing in the last 18 months, I would say. Absolutely. More and a lot of effort in that area. And you know, we are ISO 27001 completely certified. We take that very seriously. I joke that to quote President Eisenhower, and no, I'm not quite old enough to have heard him say this the first time, where he talked about the security industrial complex. He didn't really talk about that, but there is kind of the security industrial complex that's safe now with multiple staff members where that is their primary function. And without even trying, I can think of 3. And that's people who that's their main thing. And there's a whole bunch of us that's kind of the secondary thing. So yes, it's a big deal. Anybody on the call that voted for President Eisenhower? That would be, you have to be pretty old. Let's see, is there anything else we should talk about in the questions? Stuart, Ryland, is there anything that jumped to mind?
There was a few about the AI assist and the tokens and using other services. And yeah, I think that might be a good thing to cover. Yes.
So the team did build in the ability for you to supply your own web connection to Azure, and then your own API key, so that if you don't trust the one we're using, you can then make sure that whatever questions you ask get funneled into your own little world. Anyway, you have to trust us, I guess, that we're not skimming anything while we're sending it down to your API, but we aren't. So you can supply your own API key and head down that way. We are using Azure and not OpenAI directly. And so we felt that Microsoft's terms of service, according to our legal people, were a little bit safer, at least for what we're doing here. But we do understand, and I'd be curious if anybody, this will be an issue in their organization to even have this enabled at all. That one of the feedbacks we were surprised to get was basically, how do I shut this off? And we're sort of sad but we understand. And so we're thinking about some way from the install script or centrally, you can just cut it off. I think there's a how-to article that's maybe been published or at least being made, which basically, if you want to shut it off, you can block a certain address through your firewall, and that'll cut us off at the knees, and you won't be able to use the AI stuff. But yeah, that's what I'd say about that. Is there anything else we should talk about the AI things, Stuart or Ryland?
The tokens, someone asked about the tokens, but I think, you kind of said it. They're like basically kind of like words and how long you can create a prompt. Like if you paste in an essay, then it's probably going to decline it basically. So a couple of sentences.
That's right. There's a max, and we tried to give you some sort of feedback approximating what we think is going to be the max. But I think for most scenarios that you'd be trying pretty hard to hit the max, especially making regular expressions. With the SQL stuff, if you send down table definitions, then you might start bumping into limits depending on the complexity of your schema. So I think that that's probably one area where it could be troubles. I'm guessing. Let's see. Yeah, HTTP header. I'll answer this one live. Rick asks about making the headers expandable. Yes, and that is something that is a big amount of feedback that we've had, and I think the team is going to be looking at doing that for sure. So we know that what we released on the open API stuff in the HTTP caller is absolutely our first cut at it. And I'll share with the group, the guy that was working on it, actually one of the main developers got in a cycling accident and was sort of taken off the project. Unfortunately, he's going to be okay, but it was fairly serious at the time. So we lost a little bit of development time during that project, but we thought we'd still put it out because what was completed was still useful. The team is going to refine it, and it'll get to the vision that was imagined for it, probably in the .2 release, and then on from there. But yeah, everybody, Graham's going to be okay. And actually, he had the best attitude I've ever experienced in my life for somebody that's just had an accident. I called him thinking that I would be cheering him up, and by the end of the call, I was the one that was cheered up. So there's a little lesson for life there. To when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, and that's what our friend Graham certainly did. So, okay. Anything else? Let's see. Actually, Roman's question is worth, Stuart, you answered this in the chat as well, but the .1 is needed if you want the AI assist. The .0 does have those open AI transformers and the generative AI reader that Ryland talked about. So if you just want to use AI in workflows, you're fine with .0. If you want help when you're authoring, then you need .1. And Elizabeth, if you have a chance, maybe you could chat out the link to that. I think on August 22nd, we did a webinar on using AI in workflows, and that's a good way to see some of the examples of what can be done with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just dropped the link to that in the chat there.
I put Rylan on the spot. Are we looking at simplifying the upgrade process of FME Flow? That's probably one of the most, that's a hard one, but I guess what would you say about that?
Yeah, that's a hot ticket question. Absolutely. We have started to look at that problem space and understand where some improvements could be helpful. I know that we've had some improvements here on the project side, and you might be wondering, well, why is that not on our full migration side? The two features do work very closely together. So some of the improvements we see on projects in some sense is paving our way a little bit on making migration easier in general. But if you have any feedback on this, any ideas yourselves, this is kind of the phase where we're opening our arms and collecting that information all in. We don't have anything that's going to come to you within the 2023 release windows, but we will look ahead into the next releases there for what we can do.
What I'll say to the folks that want to truly have a home license to tinker around is write us at info@safe.com and let us know your situation. And we'd love to find a way to get you going at home so you can experiment and play and do some more with FME in your off time, whether it's cataloging your record collection or correcting your wife's Strava records, which I've seen a talk at an FMEUC about once. That was done with the home FME server, because the person in question was upset that they were saying that they were biking when in fact they were e-biking. So that was the FME Flow use case. All right.
Surprising no one contested your point that 30 was middle-aged. Thinking more 45 personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. If as life expands, increase, middle age actually moves up. That's a good point. Yeah. For all I know, maybe I'm middle aged at 57. Gee, 57 seems old. I'm sorry I brought that up. All right. Is there anything else we should talk about, Elizabeth?
We have a question here from Yusuf on how to learn more and get started with FME. I think the FME Accelerator is probably a great recommendation. So I'll just chat that link into the chat here in case you missed it.
Okay.
The free 90-minute workshop.
We are sharing the presentation slides as well, Elizabeth. I think someone commented on that, did they?
Yeah, the slides and the recording, we'll be sharing those out in an email in the next day here, usually same day service. So you can expect that soon. All right, any other questions we may want to address here before we wrap up, team?
There's a couple questions on performance that I thought were interesting. Like what kind of specs should I have for my machine? I think that in general, we're looking at machines that have like a dedicated core for the FME engine, maybe up to 8 gigs RAM, but it really does depend on the data volumes and services that you're connecting with. So when you're authoring your workflows in FME form, pay attention to the log, look at the system, the user time, to try and understand where your resources are being spent. There might be improvements you can make to your workspaces. There are some resources on the FME community. I don't have them at the tip of my fingers, but if you search for performance, you should be able to find some articles on tips and tricks to make your workspaces run faster. And now when you're publishing those to FME Flow, largely it's going to follow the same sort of performance characteristics. Of course, some of our server machines may be a little bit more powerful than what we're authoring on. I feel like you're on a laptop or that sort of thing. But the key thing is to test, take a look at those log files. I know we don't get up in the morning, we don't look at log files all day, but when you're authoring your workflow and thinking about how it's going to run in production, it is a really key place to go for that information.
Is there any way you could run a remote engine on a Mac? I'm teasing, but that's where you get real ripping performance. If you could, because those Mac M2, somebody else was talking about the performance, and honestly, Apple Silicon is unbelievably fast. And so if you had a Mac Studio sitting there running some remote engines, boy, that would be something. But no, that isn't a thing right now. But you can certainly author on a Mac and send that up to anywhere else.
Indeed.
And I was just on a meeting yesterday where we're talking about bringing file geodatabase to the Mac. So for those that are in love with file geodatabase, watch for that to come to the Mac sometime soon. At least one person likes that.
All right, last call. Are we good to wrap up here, team? Awesome. Okay, if you do have any questions that come up, do feel free to leave those in the questions panel still. We will be sure to follow up by email if we don't get to them all. But huge thank you to our team of presenters here today on all the content creation. I'm sure the audience really appreciates it and finds a lot of value from what I've seen today. And huge thank you to our audience for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we hope you got a lot of value from this webinar. Thanks everyone for attending, and bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.